Let's bring in today's political panel. We got Brad Blakeman, former Deputy Assistant to President George W. Bush, and Julie Roginsky, a Democratic strategist and a Fox News contributor. So, Brad, Melissa and I were watching, particularly when the president was talking about foreign policy problems that Donald Trump is going to have to face. And he went through a list. He went through Benghazi. He talked about the Russians and what they are doing in uniting with Syria, making it much more difficult to have peace there. Then he talked about the Iranians coming in. And Melissa and I were saying, now, wait a minute. Isn't he outlining the failures of his administration? Because there was the Russian reset that was supposed to ensure our relations with Russia, that we could achieve what we wanted together. Then there was the Iranian deal. That was supposed to make Iran a more compliant power, maybe not our friend, but at least not our enemy. And yet now they're acting like an enemy. So what he was doing was outlining the failures of his own administration.
Yeah, I mean, he did exactly that. And President Trump will inherit a much more dangerous world than existed 4 or 8 years ago. That's a fact. And that's going to be the challenge of President Trump, to make sure that he assures our allies and puts fear in our enemies. We need a strong military to do that. We need a focused foreign policy. We need to get our allies in check and in sync with us, and also with their own objectives. Yeah. These are the challenges that President Trump will have to have.
Well, Brad, more than anything, we need a strong economy. I think both the Democrats and the Republicans agree on that point. Without a strong economy, you can't do much at all. And the question is how he goes about implementing what he thinks is going to strengthen our economy: tax cuts, deregulation, et cetera. Is he going to do it in a bully move in the first 100 days because he has Republicans controlling the House and the Senate, or will he try to reach across the aisle? Quickly, Brad.
I think he's going to do both. He's going to be aggressive, but he also is going to try and reach across the aisle, because a dirty word in this town has been compromise. I think it's going to be a word that is used not only in spirit, but in deed.
Well, it's not being used by a lot of Democrats, Julie, right now. The president did in his favor, but outside the White House today, there were a bunch of protesters. I think we have what they had to say. Let's play that soundbite if we can.
We're here to demand that Democrats must refuse to negotiate with a racist fascist. That's right. And that we need new leadership within the Democratic Party.
Okay, now that's the kind of protest, Julie, that we're seeing all across the country. If those people couldn't hear, she said, we're here to demand that Democrats refuse to negotiate with a racist fascist. We also have a Politico article talking about this big to-do, this meeting taking place at a fancy hotel in Washington with George Soros and Nancy Pelosi and others, in which they say liberals plan full-on trench warfare against Donald Trump from day one. That doesn't sound like compromise.
Well, you know, frankly, I love these crocodile tears that Republicans are crying. It's not. I'm old enough to remember a few years ago when Mitch McConnell said his #1 priority, Senate Majority Leader, was making sure that Barack Obama was a one-term president. And he tried his best to do that. So it's not like this is new to the Democratic Party. Look, here's how I can't speak for the rest of the party. Here's how I look at what's going to happen in the next few years. Where we can agree with Donald Trump, and I'm heartened to see that he wants to put in a big infrastructure program. I'm very curious to see whether some of these conservative Republicans who said they never wanted another infrastructure program or a stimulus program are going to go along with him.
There are a lot of people that have problems with it. It's absolutely true.
If he does that, count me in. I'd love to see it. However, if he espouses some of the views of his new top aide, Steve Bannon, in dividing this country along ethnic, racial, sexual lines.
Please, you don't think that's already happened? I mean, Brad Blakeman, we had Al Sharpton in the White House about 80 times. We had Black Lives Matter in the White House. No, I won't stop, because the fact is that we have had a racial divide created over the past 5 or 6 years because the dividers, people like Al Sharpton, who's a huge racial divider, was in the White House.
I'm sorry, David.
Hold on a second.
Wait.
No, Julie, Brad, go ahead.
Let me say this. I stood on the Mall when Barack Obama was inaugurated. I listened to his inaugural address when he talked about hope and change. He's a biracial president. If anybody had the opportunity to bring us together, it's him. And he squandered it. And that's the shame, that we live in a more divisive world than when President Obama took over, especially in the inner cities of America.
They're giving me
it's a shame that Donald Trump's going to change it.
Julie, I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Do not normalize the fact that Steve Bannon, not Al Sharpton, who was never in an official role in the White House, is going to have an office outside the West Wing.
You don't think Al Sharpton visiting 80 times to the White House had any meaning at all in our racial policies?
I'm not a fan of Al Sharpton, but my goodness, Al Sharpton was not sitting outside the Oval Office writing policy. the new Karl
He
Rove, the
is
new person.
indeed doing
Oh, come
exactly
on.
that,
Stop
Julie.
it.
Don't be so
Absolutely.
naive.
Stop.
The
I'm
fact
not
is
naive.
that,
Oh, my
hold on a
goodness.
second, hold on. The fact is there have been a lot of efforts by the federal government to take over law enforcement from civilian governments, from local governments, and that is going to stop with Donald Trump administration.
Oh, good. So
and that was started, by the way, by Al Sharpton, by the entire group of Black Lives Matter people. That was their idea. They got it implemented by the president through executive privilege. Go ahead, Brad. Hold on, I'll give you the last word.
Look, it's absolutely right. The president has federalized a lot of this, and so it stands on his doorstep. Donald Trump's going to return the rule of law and the rule of order to the local administrations, where it belongs.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see. Quickly, Julie, go ahead.
Happy to see you guys endorsing sanctuary cities, since it's up to the localities now to prevent law enforcement.
We'll see what happens.
Very happy to hear you don't want the
That's a really tough
federalization.
question. You're right, Julie. That's a really tough question. But there are a lot of tough questions. Luckily, it's not my job. It's Donald Trump's job.